I stood frozen in our sunlit kitchen, holding the document that had just destroyed my world. My hands trembled as I read it again, unable to process the words. Jack, my husband of 8 years, had sold our Victorian dream house to someone named Megan for $1. $1 for the home we had spent 5 years renovating, pouring in our life savings and countless weekends. The paper slipped from my fingers as a cold realization washed over me. This wasn't a mistake. The notarized signature confirmed it. My husband had betrayed me in the most unimaginable way possible. Jack and I fell in love with our dream house on a rainy Sunday afternoon. We had been married for 3 years and were finally ready to put down roots. The moment we stepped onto the wraparound porch of the old Victorian home on Maple Street, something clicked. Despite the peeling paint, sagging floors, and outdated everything, we both knew this was meant to be ours. "Can you imagine Christmas mornings in that bay window?" Jack had whispered, squeezing my hand as we toured the dusty living room. His eyes sparkled with the same excitement I felt. We made an offer that same day, stretching our budget to the absolute limit. For 5 years, we poured everything into transforming that house. Every spare dollar went toward restoring the original hardwood floors, updating the kitchen with the farmhouse sink I had always wanted, and carefully preserving the stained glass windows that cast rainbow patterns across our hallway every afternoon. Weekends were spent painting, sanding, and learning how to do everything YouTube tutorials could teach us. That house became the physical manifestation of our love and shared dreams. We had been college sweethearts, meeting in our junior year when we were paired for a group project. Jack was studying business while I pursued journalism. He was the organized, practical one who made detailed plans for everything, while I brought spontaneity and creativity to our relationship. The balance worked perfectly, both in our marriage and in our renovation projects. But about 6 months ago, something began to change. The shifts were subtle at first. Jack started working later, often not coming home until after I had gone to bed. His explanation was always the same: a big client, an important deadline, the pressure to perform for a potential promotion. I believed him because I had always believed him. Then his phone became an extension of his hand, but he would angle it away when I came near. Notifications would come in late at night, and he would take calls in another room, his voice hushed and unfamiliar. When I asked, he'd say it was work stress, nothing more. Our joint credit card statement showed charges at restaurants I had never been to. Expensive places downtown that Jack claimed were business dinners. One Thursday evening, I called his office around 8, thinking we might meet for a late dinner if he was still working. His assistant sounded confused. "Jack left around 5 today," she said. "He mentioned something about meeting a client for drinks, but he should be done by now." He came home after 11 that night, smelling of unfamiliar perfume and avoiding my eyes when he claimed the meeting had run long. That was the first night I lay awake beside him, doubt creeping in like a winter draft through our carefully restored windows. Despite my growing concerns, I tried to convince myself I was overreacting. Jack and I had built a life together, renovated a home, planned for a family. I told myself that marriages go through phases, that the distance between us was temporary. Maybe my own focus on advancing at the newspaper where I worked had created this gap. Determined to reconnect, I planned a romantic dinner at home, recreating our first date with takeout from the Thai restaurant we loved in college and candles on the coffee table. I left work early to set everything up, sent him a flirty text, and waited. 7 o'clock came and went. At 8, he texted that he was caught in an emergency meeting and wouldn't be home for dinner. I blew out the candles and ate alone, the food tasting like nothing as I scrolled through old photos of happier times. The next day, I decided to deep clean the house to channel my anxiety into something productive. While dusting Jack's home office, I moved a stack of mail and discovered a small jewelry store bag tucked beneath it. Inside was a receipt for a diamond bracelet costing over $3,000, purchased on our anniversary 3 weeks earlier. My heart lifted momentarily. Perhaps he was planning a surprise until I noticed the date. The bracelet had been purchased and picked up weeks ago, but I had received only a quick dinner and generic card on our anniversary. The receipt was signed with a flourish, and at the bottom was a small note. "She'll love it. Good luck, Tiffany." I sat in his office chair, receipt in hand, as the undeniable truth finally settled over me. Something was very wrong in my marriage, and all my attempts to ignore it couldn't change that reality. The discovery of the bracelet receipt changed everything. Suspicion was no longer something I could push away. It had taken root, transforming how I saw every interaction with Jack. Still, a part of me resisted the obvious conclusion. We had built too much together. I needed to be certain before I made accusations that could damage our marriage beyond repair. I began paying closer attention to patterns in Jack's behavior, without letting him know I was watching. He had become an expert at offering just enough detail to sound transparent, while revealing nothing of substance. When he said he was working late, I would casually ask which client was keeping him so busy. He would provide a name and some vague details, then quickly change the subject. I started keeping a journal, noting the dates, times, and excuses. The deeper I dug, the more I questioned whether I had the right to invade his privacy this way. We had always respected each other's independence. But the alternative, continuing to live with this growing knot of doubt, seemed worse. I was becoming someone I didn't recognize, suspicious, anxious, analyzing every word from my husband for hidden meanings. After 3 weeks of this exhausting vigilance, I called my best friend Taylor for coffee. We had drifted apart over the past year as my focus narrowed to work and home renovations. Taylor worked in real estate law, specializing in property transactions. As we caught up, I carefully steered the conversation toward renovations and homes. "The market's insane right now," Taylor said, stirring her latte. "I've got clients selling houses they bought just 2 years ago for 30% more. It's a great time to have property." "We've put so much work into our place," I said, trying to sound casual. "I can't even remember where we keep all the paperwork anymore." Taylor laughed. "You should get that organized. I had a case last month where a couple couldn't find their property deed during a refinance. Total nightmare. They had to request copies from the county records office." Her words triggered something in my mind. When was the last time I had seen our home documentation? Jack handled most of our financial paperwork, a division of labor we had agreed upon early in our marriage. That afternoon, I waited until Jack texted he would be late again, then went straight to the file cabinet in his office. The financial section was methodically organized. Jack was nothing if not meticulous, but as I flipped through the folders, I noticed gaps. Several bank statements were missing, and I couldn't find our property documents at all. The sound of the garage door opening sent me scrambling to return everything to its exact place. Jack found me in the kitchen, innocently preparing dinner. "What are you doing?" he asked, noticing the open file drawer when he went to put away his briefcase. "Just organizing," I said lightly. "I couldn't find last month's cable bill." His eyes narrowed slightly. "I pay that online now. I told you that." "Right. I forgot." I smiled, but noticed how tense he had become at finding me near his files. The next day, I visited our bank while Jack was at work. The teller knew me, and I had no trouble accessing our joint account information. What I found made my stomach drop. Over the past 4 months, Jack had made withdrawals totaling nearly $20,000. The money had been transferred to his personal account, one I had forgotten existed since we had merged our finances after marriage. The teller, sensing my confusion, tried to be helpful. "Your husband was in last week. He mentioned something about investment opportunities." Jack had never spoken to me about any investments. As I left the bank, another transaction on the statement caught my eye. 3 separate payments to Peterson and Associates, a local law firm specializing in real estate. I had never heard Jack mention this firm, and we certainly weren't buying any property that I knew of. I sat in my car, staring at the bank statement. The evidence was mounting, but toward what conclusion? An affair seemed likely, but these financial movements suggested something even more calculated. Whatever was happening, Jack had been planning it carefully and keeping it hidden from me with increasing determination. I pulled out my phone and searched for Peterson and Associates. Their website showed they specialized in property transfers and real estate transactions. One of the partners, Alan Peterson, had a familiar face. I had seen him having lunch with Jack about a month ago. When I had approached their table to say hello, Jack had seemed startled and quickly introduced Alan as a potential client. Now I understood it had been another lie. 3 days later, I got my chance to dig deeper. Jack left for work in such a hurry that he forgot to close his laptop. Normally it was password protected, but he had left it in sleep mode. My hands shook as I opened it, feeling both determined and ashamed. This wasn't who we were supposed to be, spouses sneaking through each other's private communications. Yet I couldn't stop myself. His email was still open. I scrolled through his inbox, finding nothing unusual until I checked his archived folders. There I found dozens of messages to and from someone named Megan Thompson. The first email was from 8 months ago, a casual follow, up to what appeared to be an office happy hour. But the tone changed quickly in subsequent messages. Within weeks, they were making plans to meet outside of work, their language becoming increasingly intimate. Megan Thompson, the name on the document I had found. The woman to whom Jack had apparently sold our house. I clicked on her email signature and felt a fresh wave of nausea. She was a junior marketing associate at Jack's firm. Her professional headshot showed a young woman with confident eyes and a bright smile. According to her LinkedIn profile, which I immediately looked up, she had graduated college just 2 years ago. She was 20, 3 years old. The emails revealed an affair that had been going on for months, right under my nose. Jack had told her he was deeply unhappy in his marriage. He described me as controlling and career, obsessed, claiming we had grown apart years ago but stayed together out of convenience. Each word was a fresh cut. This wasn't just betrayal, it was a complete rewriting of our history together. I thought back to all the nights Jack claimed to be working late. The weekend business trip to Chicago 3 months ago. The times he said he was meeting friends for drinks, but came home smelling of unfamiliar perfume. All lies, carefully constructed to facilitate his relationship with Megan while keeping me in the dark. But the most disturbing emails were the recent ones. They were making plans for a future together in our house, my house. The transfer is done, Jack had written 2 weeks earlier. As soon as I can get Andrea to move out, the place is officially yours. Our place. Megan had replied with excitement, already planning how she would redecorate that dated Victorian. The home I had poured my heart into was being dismissed as outdated by a woman who had never even lived there. My first instinct was to confront Jack immediately, to call him, and scream until my voice gave out. But some calmer, more strategic part of me held back. I needed to understand exactly what had happened with our house before I showed my hand. That evening, I followed Jack. I told him I was having dinner with a colleague, then parked down the street from his office and waited. At 7, he emerged and drove not toward home or any restaurant I knew, but to a new condo development across town. I watched from a distance as he greeted Megan in the building's lobby, with the easy intimacy of established lovers. Through the glass windows, I could see them laughing together as they waited for the elevator, his hand resting comfortably on her lower back, in a gesture that used to be mine. That night, I researched property law until my eyes burned. From what I could understand, a spouse couldn't simply transfer jointly owned property without consent. There had to be more to the story, some legal maneuver I wasn't seeing. I needed professional help. The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove to the county records office. The clerk was sympathetic when I explained I needed to verify some information about my property. She pulled up our address, and within minutes I was staring at an official transfer deed dated just 3 weeks earlier. Jack had sold our home to Megan Thompson for $1, with his signature notarized and official. "This doesn't seem right," I murmured, scanning the document. "This is jointly owned property. How could he sell it without my signature?" The clerk frowned. "That's unusual. Let me check something." She typed rapidly, then looked up with confusion. "According to our records, the property was purchased solely by Jack Bennett. Are you sure you're a co-owner?" My world tilted sideways. Somehow, some way, Jack had managed to keep my name off our property deed when we purchased the house 5 years ago. The home I had helped choose, pay for, and renovate had legally never been mine at all. I left the records office in a fog of disbelief and betrayal. How could the house not be in my name? I had been there for every step of the purchase. I had signed the mortgage papers. My salary had paid half of every payment for 5 years. I drove aimlessly, eventually finding myself parked outside Taylor's law office. Without an appointment, I walked in, streaked, and desperate. Her assistant took one look at me and immediately ushered me into Taylor's office. "Andrea, what happened?" Taylor asked, closing her door for privacy. The whole story spilled out. Jack's affair, the house sale, my discovery that my name wasn't even on the deed. Taylor listened without interrupting, her expression growing increasingly concerned. "This doesn't make sense," she said finally. "I remember you talking about buying that house. You were both so excited." "Apparently I don't own it," I said, my voice hollow. "And now Jack has sold it to his 23-year-old girlfriend for $1. Taylor shook her head. "Even if the house was only in his name, there are still marital property considerations in this state. Let me introduce you to someone who might help." She walked me down the hall to meet Carol Harrington, a senior partner specializing in complex property law. Carol was in her 60s, with shrewd eyes and a no-nonsense manner that made me feel marginally better. Someone this competent might actually be able to help me. After hearing the situation, Carol asked pointed questions about our home purchase. "Who handled the closing? Do you remember the attorney who assisted you?" "My grandfather," I replied. "He was a retired judge. He helped us with all the paperwork since we couldn't afford a real estate attorney at the time." Carol's eyebrows raised. "Your grandfather was a judge and handled your closing? Do you have copies of the original paperwork?" I shook my head. "My grandfather passed away 3 years ago. His papers went to my mother, but she has everything in storage since she downsized." "Find those papers," Carol advised firmly. "Something isn't adding up here. A judge, even a retired one, would have ensured both spouses were protected in a property purchase." That afternoon, I called my mother and invented a story about needing some of Grandpa's old legal reference books for a work project. She gave me the access code to her storage unit, and I spent hours digging through dusty boxes. Finally, in a folder labeled Andrea and Jack House, I found a thick envelope of documents. Back home, while Jack was at yet another late meeting, I spread the papers across our dining room table. Most were copies of what I'd expect: mortgage applications, inspection reports, and closing documents. But tucked among them was a handwritten note in my grandfather's precise script, dated the week before our closing. Implemented protective clause as discussed. Both signatures required for any transfer, sale, or encumbrance. Filed with additional deed restriction. Copy in my personal records. Hope it's never needed, but better safe than sorry. Jack seemed reluctant about joint tenancy. "Keep an eye on that, Andrea." I read the note 3 times, my heart racing. I had no memory of any such discussion with my grandfather, but that wasn't surprising. At the time, I had been overwhelmed with the purchase process and had trusted him to handle the legal details. But this note suggested he had seen something in Jack that had concerned him, enough to add extra protection without making a big issue of it. I kept searching and found another folder containing what appeared to be a supplementary deed filing. The legal language was dense, but one passage stood out. Property may not be transferred, sold, or encumbered without the express written consent of both joint tenants, Andrea Lynn Bennett and Jack Thomas Bennett, regardless of recorded title status. My grandfather had created a failsafe. Even if the main deed listed only Jack's name, which now made sense given my grandfather's note about Jack's reluctance, this supplementary filing created an additional legal requirement for any property transfer. As the implications sank in, I felt a strange mix of grief and gratitude. My grandfather had apparently sensed something about Jack that I had been too in love to see. He had quietly protected me, even as he smiled at our wedding and helped us buy our first home together. And now, years after his death, that protection might save me from homelessness. The physical and emotional toll of the past weeks caught up with me all at once. I had lost weight, my clothes hanging loose on my frame. Dark circles shadowed my eyes from sleepless nights. Friends at work had started asking if I was ill. In a way, I was sick with betrayal and uncertainty. Meanwhile, Jack's behavior grew increasingly suspicious. His business trips became more frequent. Sometimes he didn't come home at all, offering thin excuses about early meetings or late client dinners. He seemed almost relieved to be away from the house, away from me. Through careful monitoring of his emails, I discovered Jack and Megan were planning to move in together as soon as I was out of the picture. They had already scheduled painters and decorators to erase all traces of my existence once I was gone. Jack planned to ask for a divorce within the month, using the house transfer as leverage to pressure me into a quick settlement. What they didn't know was that I now held the key to unraveling their entire plan. I took the supplementary deed filing to Carol the next morning. She examined it carefully, occasionally nodding or making notes. "Your grandfather was very thorough," she said finally, looking up with the first genuine smile I'd seen from her. "This clause is iron-clad. The transfer to this Megan person is completely invalid without your signature. The house is still legally yours and Jack's as joint tenants. So the sale for $1 is meaningless, void, as if it never happened." Carol leaned forward. "But we need to play this carefully. The fact that Jack attempted this transfer without your knowledge shows he's willing to act dishonestly. We don't want to tip our hand until we've secured your position." Over the next week, Carol helped me gather comprehensive financial records and document everything I knew about Jack's affair and his attempts to transfer our property. We filed for emergency injunctions to prevent any further financial maneuvers on Jack's part. I moved most of my personal savings to a new private account on Carol's advice. "Don't confront him until we have everything in place," she cautioned. "Let him think you're still in the dark." It was the hardest thing I've ever done, continuing to live with Jack, pretending I didn't know he was planning to throw me out of my own home. I forced myself to act normal, to make dinner, and ask about his day as if my world hadn't shattered. Each lie he told about working late, about business meetings, about why he seemed distant, I noted mentally, building a catalog of his betrayal. Finally, 2 weeks after discovering my grandfather's protective clause, Jack made his move. I was reading in bed when he came home late and sat heavily on the edge of the mattress, his back to me. "We need to talk, Andrea," he said, his voice carefully controlled. "This isn't working anymore. Us, I mean." "What are you saying?" I asked, as if I didn't already know what was coming. He turned to face me, his expression a practiced mask of regretful determination. "I want a divorce. I think we both know things haven't been right for a long time." I closed my book slowly. "Is there someone else?" A flash of annoyance crossed his face. He had clearly expected me to cry, to beg, to ask what I had done wrong. My direct question disrupted his script. "That's not the point," he said dismissively. "The point is, we've grown apart. We want different things." "And what about the house?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. He stood up and began pacing. "About that, the house is in my name, Andrea. It always has been. I've already made arrangements. You'll need to find somewhere else to live by the end of the month." "Arrangements?" I repeated. What kind of arrangements? Jack sighed, as if explaining something to a child. I've transferred the property. Legally, it's not mine to give you anymore. You sold our house? Without telling me? I injected as much shocked hurt into my voice as I could. It's done. There's no point arguing about it. He pulled a suitcase from the closet and began throwing clothes into it. I'll be staying elsewhere until you move out. My lawyer will contact you about the divorce proceedings. I got out of bed and stood in front of him. I can't believe you sold our dream house to your 23-year-old girlfriend for $1, I said calmly as he packed his bags. Jack froze, his hand suspended over the suitcase. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across his face, quickly replaced by defiance. You've been snooping through my things. You left the transfer deed on your desk, I replied. Not very careful for someone planning such an elaborate betrayal. His expression hardened. It doesn't matter how you found out. The house belongs to Megan now. You'll never get it back. It's legally hers now, he smirked, regaining his confidence. The deed's been transferred. There's nothing you can do. I smiled then, feeling a strange calm descend over me. Did you actually read the full property deed when we bought this house? The complete document, including the supplementary filing my grandfather prepared? Jack's smirk faltered. What are you talking about? My grandfather added a special clause to our deed. Any transfer of this property requires both our signatures. Both, Jack. Not just yours. The color drained from his face. That's not possible. The title is only in my name. The title might be, but the binding deed restriction isn't. It's a separate legal instrument, and it's been in place since the day we bought this house. I crossed to the dresser and retrieved a copy of the document Carol had helped me certify. Your transfer to Megan is completely invalid. This is still our house. Still my house. Jack snatched the paper from my hands, his eyes frantically scanning the legal language. I watched as comprehension dawned, followed by disbelief, then panic. He sank onto the bed, the document crumpling in his grip. You can't do this, he whispered. You can't. I'm not doing anything, Jack. My grandfather did it years ago. He must have seen something in you that I was too in love to notice. The strange calm still buoyed me, keeping me steady as I watched my husband's carefully constructed plans collapse. You might want to call Megan and let her know she doesn't own this house after all. I imagine that will be an uncomfortable conversation. Jack seemed to physically deflate before my eyes. His shoulders sagged, and for a moment, he looked genuinely lost. Then his expression hardened again. This changes nothing. I'm still leaving you. We'll sell the house and split the proceeds. We can discuss that with our respective lawyers, I said evenly. In the meantime, since you've already packed, I think it's best if you continue with your plan to stay elsewhere. Somewhere that isn't with your pregnant girlfriend, perhaps? Jack's head snapped up. How did you? Your emails weren't particularly discreet. Congratulations, by the way. I'm sure you'll be a wonderful father. The words tasted bitter, but I kept my composure. This man who had shared my bed and my life for 8 years now felt like a stranger. Jack grabbed his suitcase with trembling hands. At the bedroom door, he paused and looked back. This isn't over, Andrea. You have no idea what you're up against. Neither do you, I replied softly, and watched as he walked away. The day after Jack moved out, he began a campaign to regain control. First came the apologetic text messages, claiming he had made a terrible mistake, that Megan meant nothing to him, that he wanted to work things out. When I didn't respond, he escalated to hourly phone calls, which I let go to voicemail. His messages veered between contrition and veiled threats, his voice growing increasingly desperate. On day 3, he showed up at our house with flowers and tears, begging for forgiveness. Through the door chain, I told him to communicate through my lawyer. He left the wilting bouquet on the porch and sent me an email that same evening, outlining a generous divorce proposal where I would get 30% of the house value. 40% less than I'm legally entitled to, I told Taylor over coffee the next day. He's still trying to cheat me, just less blatantly. Classic negotiation tactic, Taylor said. Start with an insultingly low offer, so the fair one looks generous by comparison. How's the rest of the legal process going? Carol filed the emergency injunctions. Jack can't sell or transfer any marital assets now without court approval. She's also submitting the documentation about the invalid house transfer. My phone buzzed with a text. Unknown number. This is Megan. We need to talk about the house. I showed Taylor, who raised her eyebrows. The girlfriend enters the scene. Are you going to respond? Not without Carol's advice, I said, putting my phone away. But I didn't have to reply to Megan. That evening, she appeared on my doorstep. Through the peephole, I could see she was exactly as her photo suggested. Young, pretty, with an air of confidence that seemed slightly forced. Her hand rested protectively over her stomach, which showed no sign yet of the pregnancy Jack had confirmed. Against my better judgment, I opened the door. Andrea Bennett? She asked, her voice higher than I expected. Yes. And you must be Megan, the new owner of my house. I kept my tone neutral, suddenly aware of how surreal this moment was facing the woman who had been sleeping with my husband, who thought she owned my home. She flushed. That's what I came to talk about. Jack said there's some kind of problem with the deed. The problem is that he had no legal right to transfer the property without my signature. The sale isn't valid. Megan's composure slipped. But he promised me. He said it was all arranged, that this would be our home to raise our baby. Her voice caught on the last word. For a moment, I felt a flicker of sympathy. This young woman had believed Jack's promises just as completely as I once had. Did he also tell you he was married when he started seeing you? I asked quietly. He said you were separated, that you only lived together for financial reasons while finalizing the divorce. Uncertainty clouded her features. That's what he told everyone at work. Another lie. Jack and I had been very much together when his affair with Megan began. I wondered how many other falsehoods he had fed her. We weren't separated, I said. And there was no divorce in progress until he asked for one 3 days ago. I'm sorry if he led you to believe otherwise. Megan's face crumpled, her hands dropping to her sides. I knew something wasn't right. He's been acting so strange since you found out. Frantic, almost scared. She looked up at me. What happens now? With the house? Legally, it's still jointly owned by Jack and me. What happens next will be determined through the divorce proceedings. She nodded slowly, then turned to leave. At the porch steps, she paused. I really did think you knew about us. I never would have. She trailed off, then hurried to her car without finishing the thought. I closed the door, unsure how to process this unexpected encounter. Megan was both my husband's lover and another victim of his lies. The complexity of it all was exhausting. The next morning, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. The man on the line introduced himself as Richard Dawson, head of compliance at Jack's company. Mrs. Bennett, I apologize for the intrusion, but we're conducting an internal investigation regarding some financial irregularities, and your husband's name has come up. Would you be willing to answer a few questions? A chill ran through me. What kind of irregularities? I'm not at liberty to share details at this stage, but it involves expense accounts and possibly client funds. We understand you and Mr. Bennett are currently separated, but any information you could provide would be helpful. I agreed to meet him that afternoon at his office. The company occupied 3 floors of a downtown high-rise. Richard Dawson was waiting in the lobby, a serious-looking man in his 50s, with reading glasses perched on his nose. Thank you for coming, he said, leading me to a conference room where 2 other people waited. A woman introduced as the company's legal counsel and a man from their accounting department. The formal setup made my stomach tighten. Mrs. Bennett, Are you aware of any unusual financial activities your husband may have been engaged in over the past year? Richard asked, once we were seated. We maintained separate personal accounts alongside our joint household account, I said carefully. Recently, I discovered Jack had been making large withdrawals from our joint savings without discussion. The three exchanged glances. Do you know what these funds were used for? I thought about the bracelet receipt, the expensive restaurants, the trips with Megan. Personal expenses, I believe. Gifts, dinners. He was having an affair with Megan Thompson from your marketing department. The lawyer made a note. We're aware of the relationship, which violates our company policy regarding supervisors dating subordinates. However, our concern extends beyond that. We found evidence that Mr. Bennett has been submitting falsified expense reports and potentially diverting client funds for personal use. My mind flashed to the missing bank statements, Jack's increasing secretiveness about finances. How much money are we talking about? Our preliminary audit suggests upwards of $200,000 over 18 months. The figure was staggering. Jack had been making a comfortable salary, and with my income, we lived well but not extravagantly. Where had all that money gone? There's something else, I said slowly. Jack recently attempted to transfer our house to Miss Thompson for $1, without my knowledge or consent. Could that be connected to your investigation? Richard leaned forward. It might be. If he was concerned about potential legal consequences, he might have been trying to shield assets. Mrs. Bennett, we'll need to review your joint financial records as part of our investigation. Would you be willing to provide access? I thought about Jack's betrayal, the house, the lies. Yes, I'll have my lawyer contact you today. As I prepared to leave, Richard added, Mrs. Bennett, I should warn you. Given the seriousness of these allegations, this matter will likely be referred to law enforcement. Your husband may be facing criminal charges. Walking to my car, I felt oddly detached, as if watching someone else's life unravel. The man I had married, who had picked out paint colors with me and planned our future, was a stranger, capable of theft, fraud, and elaborate deception. That evening, as I sat alone in the kitchen of the home Jack had tried to steal from me, I received a text from Megan. We need to talk again. It's important. We met at a coffee shop the following afternoon. Megan looked even more distressed than during our first encounter. Jack lied about everything, she said without preamble. He told me the company approved our relationship. He said you knew about us and had agreed to the divorce months ago. He promised me the house was his to give. She twisted a napkin between her fingers. Now he's being investigated for stealing from the company, and I might lose my job just for being associated with him. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it. None of this is your fault. Megan looked up, her eyes red, rimmed. I ended it with him yesterday. He went crazy, saying I was betraying him after everything he'd done for me. But it was all built on lies. She pulled out her phone and slid it across the table. You should see these. I think your lawyer will want them too. On her screen were screenshots of text conversations with Jack. Messages where he detailed how he would get me out of the picture, transfer assets to her name to protect them, and start their new life together once the divorce was finalized. In one particularly chilling exchange, he suggested using the pregnancy to pressure me into accepting a smaller settlement, referring to it as leverage. Is there even a baby? I asked quietly. Megan nodded. Yes, that part is real. But I can't be with someone who would use our child as a bargaining chip in a divorce. She took back her phone. I've already sent these to Mr. Bill Dawson at the company. I'm cooperating with their investigation. As we parted ways, Megan paused. He used both of us, Andrea. Different ways, but equally cruel. I hope you get to keep the house. You deserve that much. The following week brought a new revelation. Carol called with news that made my blood run cold. Andrea, we've found something concerning. Jack took out a personal loan 3 months ago, using the house as collateral. He forged your signature on the documents. How much? I asked, dreading the answer. $150,000. We've traced some of it to jewelry purchases, travel, and cash withdrawals. I've already filed fraud charges and contacted the lender to dispute the validity of the loan. I sank into a chair, trying to absorb this latest betrayal. The loan, the company theft, the house transfer. It's like he was systematically looting our entire life. The good news, Carol continued, is that your grandfather's property clause helps us here too. Since both signatures are required for any encumbrance of the property, including using it as loan collateral, we have strong grounds to invalidate the loan agreement. But you need to be prepared for potential legal complications. Both you and Jack might be named in lawsuits by the lender or Jack's company. I thought about how thoroughly Jack had betrayed, not just me, but everyone around him. His company, Megan, even the lenders he had defrauded. The man I had married had become someone capable of destroying lives without remorse, all to fund a lifestyle he felt entitled to. The house that had once symbolized our love and future now stood as a monument to Jack's deception. Yet, thanks to my grandfather's foresight, it remained the one thing he couldn't steal from me. The irony wasn't lost on me. In trying to take everything, Jack would ultimately lose it all. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal meetings, depositions, and painful discoveries. Jack's company had filed criminal charges for embezzlement and fraud after their investigation revealed he had been falsifying client billing and expense reports for nearly 2 years. The district attorney's office was building a case that could send him to prison for up to 10 years. Meanwhile, Carol worked tirelessly to protect me from the fallout. We documented every financial transaction in our marriage, proving I had no knowledge of or involvement in Jack's criminal activities. Carol helped me file an affidavit with the lender Jack had defrauded, presenting evidence that my signature had been forged on the loan documents. The handwriting analysis confirmed it, Carol told me, during one of our regular strategy sessions. The expert witness is solid. Between that and your grandfather's property clause, the court has invalidated both the loan and the property transfer to Megan. What about the bank? I asked. They're out $150,000. They're adding those damages to their civil suit against Jack. They've agreed to remove you from their complaint based on the evidence of fraud. She smiled slightly. They're actually considering criminal charges of their own. I shook my head, still struggling to comprehend how thoroughly Jack had imploded his life and nearly taken me down with him. And the divorce? Given the criminal charges and financial misconduct, we're in a strong position. The judge is likely to award you the house outright, plus a portion of any remaining marital assets that haven't been squandered. 3 months after Jack moved out, I received a letter from him. The return address was his parents' home in Cleveland, where he had apparently retreated after losing his job, his girlfriend, and his freedom of movement. The court had required him to surrender his passport while charges were pending. Andrea, the letter began, I know you probably hate me, and I deserve it. Everything fell apart so fast. Megan lost the baby. The company is pressing charges. My parents can barely look at me. I keep thinking about our house and all the work we put into it. I never thought it would end this way. If there's any chance we could talk. I folded the letter without finishing it and slipped it into a folder of documentation for the divorce. His words rang hollow, full of self-pity but devoid of genuine remorse. He was sorry his plans had failed, not that he had betrayed me in the first place. The criminal trial moved quickly, with overwhelming evidence against Jack. He ultimately accepted a plea deal, 5 years for embezzlement and fraud, with the possibility of parole after 3, plus restitution to his company and the bank he had defrauded. On the day of his sentencing, I sat in the back of the courtroom, watching, as the confident, ambitious man I had married was led away in handcuffs. He glanced back once, his eyes meeting mine briefly before he was escorted through the side door. In that moment, I felt no satisfaction, only a profound sadness for the years and trust we had lost. The divorce was finalized a month later. As Carol had predicted, the judge awarded me full ownership of our house, calling it the clearest case of attempted marital asset dissipation he had seen in 20 years on the bench. The court also granted me a portion of Jack's remaining retirement accounts that hadn't been drained for his double life. Megan and I met one last time, at her request. She had found a new job in another state and wanted to say goodbye. "I still can't believe how easily I believed him," she said, stirring her coffee absently. "All those promises, the future he described, none of it was real." "He was convincing," I replied. "I was married to him for 8 years and never saw the truth until it was almost too late." She looked up. "How are you doing? Really?" I considered the question. Rebuilding. Some days are harder than others. The house helps having something solid to hold on to. You know what's strange? I'm almost grateful it happened this way. If we had actually ended up together, who knows how long his lies would have continued. At least now I can start over with my eyes open. After Megan left for her new life across the country, I threw myself into reclaiming my home. I repainted every room, choosing colors that spoke to me rather than compromising with Jack's preferences. I replaced our old mattress and rearranged the furniture, transforming spaces that had held too many memories. The community I had feared would judge me instead rallied around. Neighbors who had heard about Jack's betrayal through local news coverage of his arrest brought meals and offered help with house projects. Colleagues at the newspaper where I worked covered assignments for me during the worst days of the legal battles. Even Jack's former coworkers reached out, sharing their shock and support. 6 months after the divorce, I hosted a housewarming party for my reclaimed home. Taylor was there, along with other friends who had stood by me. My mother came, bringing a small wooden box of my grandfather's personal effects she had saved for me. "He would be so proud of how you've handled all this," she said, pressing the box into my hands. "He always said you had his fighting spirit." Later that evening, alone after the guests had left, I opened the box. Inside were cufflinks, his favorite fountain pen, and a small leather journal. As I flipped through the journal, a folded note fell out. It was addressed to me in my grandfather's handwriting, dated shortly before his death. "My dearest Andrea," it read, "if you're reading this, you found my journal, which means I'm gone. I hope you never need the protection I built into your house deed, but if you do, remember this. The strongest foundations aren't made of concrete or stone, but of foresight and love. Trust your instincts. They're usually right. Your house is more than walls and a roof, it's a testament to what you can build for yourself. Whatever life brings you, know that my love and protection continue, even when I cannot. All my love, Grandpa." Tears blurred my vision as I clutched the note. My grandfather had seen what I couldn't or wouldn't about Jack. His quiet intervention had saved me from homelessness and financial ruin. His wisdom reached across years, guiding me even now. In the months that followed, I established a small foundation using part of my divorce settlement. The Protective Deed Project provided free legal assistance to women, ensuring their names were properly recorded on property deeds and that protective clauses were included in marital assets. It was my way of extending my grandfather's foresight to others who might need it. Looking back, I can see the red flags I missed with Jack, the small controlling behaviors that seemed like protectiveness, the financial decisions he made unilaterally for our benefit, the subtle ways he isolated me from friends like Taylor, who might have helped me see the truth sooner. The Victorian house on Maple Street stands stronger now, its foundation more secure than ever. In losing the husband I thought I knew, I found a resilience I never knew I possessed. My grandfather's hidden clause didn't just save my home, it taught me to trust the quiet voice of intuition that whispers warnings we too often ignore. Sometimes I walk through the rooms we renovated together, tracing the woodwork we restored side by side, and I allow myself to remember the good times without letting them obscure the truth. Love can be genuine even when the loved one is not. The dreams we built together were real, even if Jack's commitment to them was false. The most valuable lesson wasn't about property law or hidden clauses. It was learning that sometimes the people who truly love us protect us in ways we may not understand until we need that protection most. My grandfather saw Jack clearly long before I could, and rather than forcing me to choose, he quietly ensured I would have options when the truth finally emerged. Today, my home is truly mine in title, in spirit, and in the peace I've found within its walls. Jack's betrayal nearly cost me everything, but in the end, it gave me something far more precious: the knowledge that I am stronger than any deception, more resilient than any betrayal, and worthy of the home and life I've rebuilt from the ashes of broken trust. Have you ever experienced a situation where someone's foresight protected you from harm? Or perhaps you've had that gut feeling that something wasn't quite right, but pushed it aside? I believe we all have inner wisdom that tries to warn us, even when we're not ready to listen. If this story resonated with you, please leave a comment sharing your thoughts or experiences. Don't forget to like this video if you found it meaningful. Subscribe for more stories of resilience and triumph, and share with someone who might need to hear that even the deepest betrayals can lead to newfound strength. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you homes filled with genuine love and protection, wherever you may find them.